Welcome back into another edition of the post-game press conference on YouTube. I'm Ryan Pijo alongside John Lodge as always, and this program is about breaking down the recent advancements in the sports world, the NHL, the major leagues, and a little bit of the NFL today. We're poised to deliver hot takes on all of it, so sit back, relax, and let's dial it in. Today we're getting caught up to speed on some headlines. The Leafs win 2 this week against the Winnipeg Jets, and so many storylines are coming out of these two games that it's probably going to take up the bulk of our show today. The Leafs are now a dirty team as the script has been flipped over the last 48 hours, and the Blue Jays are 10-11 after taking 2 of 3 from the Rays this week. Ryu exited the game early yesterday after pitching just 2 2/3 innings. So we'll have some hot takes on both of those Toronto teams, as well as John wants to get in some UFC crazy card that went down this weekend. As always, there's lots to get into on all fronts. So if you're streaming live, feel free to direct your questions or comments to today's show at our Twitter account. That's at Postgame Media. So if you'd like to make some sort of contribution, be sure to do that and give us a follow. I'm the number 4 effort on Twitter, and John over there is at John Lodge Music. Alrighty, John, before we get into the NHL, you started off air today's show talking about a bit of a storyline or a circumstance here in the NFL you'd like to bring up. So let's hear it. What's going on here?
A little bit of backstory for the listeners, for the viewers. The 49ers, NFL, San Francisco 49ers, traded up recently to acquire the number 3 overall pick in the upcoming draft this week on Thursday. Big news in the week that they acquired it, and everyone has been speculating since what is going to happen with Jimmy Garoppolo. Well, Kyle Shanahan had a press conference today, and he had some interesting comments. Here's what he had to say.
I can't guarantee that anybody in the world will be alive Sunday, so I can't guarantee who will be on our roster on Sunday. So that goes for all of us.
So, yeah, those comments were quite interesting indeed, seeing as the question simply placed to him was, can you guarantee that Jimmy Garoppolo would be on the roster come training camp, come the game 1 of the 2021 NFL season? And Kyle Shanahan went so far as to say he couldn't guarantee the actual lives of people on that day. And that's a little bit extreme to me. And there's a phrase, he doth protest too much. You think that I know that if I was Jimmy G, I would want my head coach to come out and say, hell yeah, he's our starting quarterback. He's QB1 come game 1. Next question. And even if he's not QB1 come game 1, don't you think you would say that anyway, just to try and diffuse the situation, as opposed to going as extreme as what we just heard?
I kind of like that he went extreme, though. I mean, I know that you're a little flabbergasted, but why not, right? At this day and age, he's clearly, looking into his crystal ball, and he can't see further than the rest of this week. So he has no clue if Sunday is even going to come for us. I love it, man. I love the hyperbole behind it. He doesn't want to just give you the straight up answer. He'd rather pull the the nerdy move, and maybe he's looking in and realizing that the Mayan calendar or some sort of issue is lined up where.
Yeah, I was going to say Kyrie Irving might be giving Kyle Shanahan a call here in the next couple of days and see if he has any insider knowledge on maybe an alien invasion or flat Earth or something.
Of course, the NFL draft is coming this week. Can you give us the exact day?
Thursday evening, and I believe it'll be on ESPN, which will probably be TSN here in Canada. So, it'll be interesting to watch, to see what happens, see who moves up, who moves down.
Something like 4 quarterbacks could get picked in the top 4. Wasn't that the big story this year? There's a whole bunch of quarterbacks. Trevor Lawrence, obviously number 1, but I thought I heard somebody say in the top 5 or 6, there's supposed to be a ton of quarterbacks go.
Yeah, lots of QB talent, but also defensive talent and a couple wide receivers out there. Don't be surprised if Jerry Jones goes out and takes the best possible wide receiver at his position, because that's what he always does. Right. And needless of the need for the team. He goes and gets just go back and look at last year. He could have improved the team without getting CeeDee Lamb. He could have drafted somebody else, and he chose to get CeeDee Lamb instead.
CeeDee Lamb had a pretty decent season, though, right? It wasn't the worst pick.
No, it's not a bad pick. It's just the needs for the team, right? moving on, the top picks, the top QBs, Mac Jones is the name that's floating around
Right.
for the possibility for the 49ers, because as heard on Overdrive, or as I heard on Overdrive, he's the most NFL ready QB to jump in and start right away. So what that says for Jimmy Garoppolo, I don't know, but I don't see how there's any way that maybe on draft night, maybe just after draft night, that Jimmy Garoppolo isn't either traded or released by the 49ers.
Well, I wasn't thinking about this, but I've got a little bit of a soft spot for Gardner Minshew because it's the Jacksonville Jaguars who have the first overall pick, correct?
Oh my goodness, that
Terrence,
guy's
yeah,
I
Trevor
don't
Lawrence
know.
is going
Maybe
there,
he's
yeah.
Nick Foles somewhere.
Maybe. I liked
Yeah, I
Gardner
don't know.
Minshew, though. He was quite the character. It was fun to watch him, even though he wasn't, the most elite quarterback. Just the whole persona, the character. He could get it done. He wasn't a terrible quarterback. So now he's going to be, definitely push down the limelight behind a guy like Trevor Lawrence, who's been the top of the talk, or the main story, at
He was
least
a
for me, in the last
meteorite,
2 years.
the shooting star that flashed through our lives and was
Oh,
beautiful and bright, but burned out quickly.
great to be along with, as part
That's
of the ride with Gardner Minshew. Make it sound so
Gardner
bleak.
Minshew.
All right,
Yeah,
over to the
no, I
NHL.
mean,
What's
who's
that?
to say what happens with Gardner? I was like, who's to say what happens with Gardner? Maybe he gets a chance with one of the lesser teams, but it seems that with Trevor Lawrence incoming, that he has lost his starting job.
Over to the NHL, Montreal called up Cole Caulfield tonight for his first NHL game on an emergency call-up. So, any Habs fans listening, congratulations, your big stars here, and hopefully he can perform for you. I'm a little nervous because he's a little guy. You never know what to think with those guys. They might come in and completely tear things up like Johnny Gaudreau and Mitch Marner, or they might need a little bit more seasoning. So, hopefully the expectation on Cole Caulfield that we've seen in the entire season so far, everyone's comparing him to Gretzky. All these crazy names. Yeah. Maybe
leading 2-1 right now.
there we go. So hopefully Cole Caulfield essentially can fill some sort of boots that some sort of role he's been given. And quietly, the Pittsburgh Penguins have heated up as well. They lead the division, and that's out of nowhere since they fired their front staff and hired in was it Brian Burke and whoever else to take over.
Ron
Jim Rutherford.
Hextall.
I guess they didn't
Yeah.
fire Jim Rutherford. Kind of just walked away mid-season when no one was really paying attention there. He
I
decided
mean,
to back away from the Flames before they got too hot, right? And once again, Pittsburgh's turned it around mid-season as they always seem to do.
well, I was going to say, to Mario's credit, and I believe the report was Rutherford wanted to trade key pieces away, and he couldn't get the authorization from ownership to do so. And to Lemieux's credit, he was right. Look, they didn't kick Jim Rutherford out. He decided to leave, and they bring someone else in, but they weren't wrong. The team could compete. They were just off to a slow start, and they got around it. The goaltending has come around for them. Tristan Jarry is playing well right now. Sidney Crosby's playing out of his mind. It's a situation where the Pittsburgh Penguins are legitimately cup contenders now, right? Now, how high up the list they are, I don't know, but they're definitely in the conversation. Whereas a month and a half ago, we were questioning whether they were even going to be in the playoffs.
If you recall back, the last Stanley Cups that they won, I think it was in the back-to-back cup after they had just won. The season after, they were abysmal, and the talk was who's getting traded this time around. Is Rutherford, hasn't he made any of the right moves, or is this an old guy that's maybe not got quite the touch on the new school management position? And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I think they hired Mike Sullivan mid-season and won a Stanley Cup. And again, you've got another Pittsburgh team with kind of a slow start. All the key pieces of a cup-winning team just getting older and older by the year, and yet it seems like every time you question this team, they turn around, make some sort of adjustment mid-season, whether it's a coach or management change, and they're off to the races. Now, Maple Leaf fans aren't going to hear this, but Cody Cece's been a key piece in that team so far this season. It's a surprise because you look at how much he caused a headache over here. Mind you, he was in kind of miscast and get paired with Morgan Riley more times than not. But it's just funny to see Cody Cece as a guy over there that they've welcomed in, and he's been a solid piece for them making this run and leading their division now.
Yeah, Cody Cece's been pretty good this year, but you really want to go back. I can remember Jim Balsillie and the almost bankrupt Pittsburgh Penguins, and him, the BlackBerry millionaire, having the Pittsburgh Penguins logo on his BlackBerry in the media, like he was going to buy the Penguins and they were going to move to Hamilton.
Yep.
And he tried that with another team. I believe he tried that with Nashville. and neither worked out for Mr. Balsillie. But yeah, you go from that to multiple Stanley Cups, right? And eras of dominance and eras that will be written in the history books. You'll look back to how Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, how Marc-Andre Fleury, and even Matt Murray, they were all able to get it done, and they were able to get it done at a consistent rate. So Pittsburgh is a perennial contender now. But I can remember back to a time when probably most of our listeners were eating SpaghettiOs on their with their toast, watching Sunday or Saturday morning cartoons while I was watching hockey. But yeah, I can remember reading headlines about that back in the day. So Pittsburgh always a contender, and no surprise to me that they're back in the conversation.
Another team that did it right when the Leafs were struggling and we wanted to have a team to compare them to. How are they going to get themselves out of this?
Like Berkey said, what was I supposed to do? Win the lottery like like Pittsburgh did, right? Like what are you going to do, right? Some people win the Lotto Max and some people don't.
And then he doesn't really need to walk back on any comments, but it's kind of funny how he ends up being, in the
he ends up being his general manager.
Yeah. He was famous for being the guy kind of chirping that whole situation. It's very funny. But again, you look at a team like Pittsburgh, and they've got all the the pieces that have won Stanley Cups. They've been through it all. They have the experience. They've got one of the best players in the world. Used to be the best player in the world. So I mean, you can never count out a team that's got Crosby, Malkin, Letang. I just think it's funny again when you try to compare like a team like Buffalo. That's just been awful for so long and they need an answer. Well, maybe you should just tank properly, draft properly, and build the right culture, because it didn't take too long in Pittsburgh. All they did was go from being one of the laughing stocks in the league to drafting first, like they grabbed a Fleury, Jordan Staal, Crosby, Malkin, long Letang, 5 picks right there. And you compare that to some of the teams in the league right now, like our Maple Leafs and their major 5 picks.
No, right? you can go ahead and look at compare that to Edmonton. Hall, Eberle, Nugent Hopkins,
what it could have been,
Yakupov, and you goes to show good drafting versus just drafting for the best player or whatever.
The difference there too, like it's timing as well, because all those top picks are all forwards in Edmonton, right? Whereas in Pittsburgh, it was a combination of Fleury out of nowhere, one of the rare top picks for a goaltender. Obviously, that doesn't happen very often. And then you've got just stealing Jordan Staal. I don't think he was a first overall pick. Malkin and Crosby. I don't think Letang was a first overall pick. So I guess they got lucky with the timing as well. Whereas you stick Edmonton in there and they got forward after forward after forward, right? with Hall, Eberle, Nugent Hopkins, and Yakupov. If you have more of a balance, I wonder what we're talking about with the Edmonton Oilers nowadays. I'm sure they would have had at least one piece they could have kept. It's funny how they moved on from so many of those. Like Nugent Hopkins is still around. Shout out to him. But if they had maybe had some balance, maybe Nugent Hopkins is a starting goaltender and things like that, right? Or Yakupov is a number 1 defenseman along with the McDavids or whoever comes down the road. So again, quietly Pittsburgh's heated up. They lead the division, and just a quick reminder, you can never count them out. And shout out to Berkey because we love him. But into the back-to-back Winnipeg games this week with the Leafs, I thought it was an amazing matchup for both teams because they're both seemed to destined to meet in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And again, that final game of the season, it's their last matchup in this weird North Division schedule. I really hope it's not a bloodbath. I'm almost going to bet that it's not. But they do meet again. And I want to hear, just before we get into the nitty gritty and all the breakdown, what's your initial takeaway from the Leafs now after these 2 games against the Winnipeg Jets? What do you think of this team?
Gary Roberts, Darcy Tucker, Matt Sundin, Alex McGillney.
I like these
names. Pat Quinn.
Okay.
Never has a Leafs team been as tough as that team until this year, until these last few games.
And you got some replacements like Foligno, right? Simmons, Thornton. All of a sudden we've got some new names, but you're right.
Yeah. And I heard that, and that take, it resonated so much with me because I remember my younger years and my young teenage years, I watched these guys and I watched them patrol the ice and I watched them control it. And I left it a massive name, Ty Domi. Right now, there's no Ty Domi.
I'm leaving out names right now too.
But there's a lot of toughness on this team, and it's toughness that the league isn't used to seeing from the Toronto Maple Leafs since the Pat Quinn era. And so now, because it's happening, all of a sudden, people are getting upset. They're getting butthurt over it, and the word "dirty" has been thrown around. Now, it wasn't thrown out by the Winnipeg Jets. Let's just get this straightforward. It was thrown out by a Winnipeg reporter to Paul Maurice, and Paul Maurice answered with a colorful response, as Paulie
Yeah, he's
tends
very
to
famous
do.
for that.
And he did it in his own style, and he had what he said, what he had to say. Making light of the fines that would be issued, and I've said it on this show before. You know how I feel about the fines in the NHL. It needs to be adjusted, and I don't see how we don't come into a post game presser in the offseason and talking about an adjustment to the discipline in the NHL because there's so much noise about it right now. They're going to have to do something.
You think that's like a number one thing in the offseason?
I think, I don't know, maybe not number one, but I think it's one of those things that gets done to appease. It's a throw in. Right?
You're talking at like one of the general managers meetings right at the end of the season.
Yeah.
We're talking like, throw this on the table, get rid of the offside review, and we got to adjust fines for things like this.
Yeah, and the way the NBA does it is all the fines that the players and the teams, all the money that's taken from them, it goes to charity. And it goes to a lot goes to the NBA Cares charity and other various charities around the world. I read a story about it recently. So you could do that as well with the NHL. You could make sure that you're taking the money and it's going to something that the players wouldn't mind losing that money to. Right, it's not just going to line the pockets of whoever, and I don't know where fines go to in the NHL. I don't know if it does go to charity right now, but it's not very much. So if it does, I don't know where it's going. But the point is if
probably
it does
goes back
increase,
to the league. That's one of the cheapest leagues out there. Right? Professional sports probably goes right back to the league to help.
Yeah, it goes to the Arizona Coyotes. That's who it goes to. Because they're still paying for the Coyotes. But when the fines increase, which I think, right. Like I said, I think they will. Then it becomes more important as to where this money's going, and I think it'll end up going to charity like the NBA does, because the NHL just copies the NBA, and that's not a bad thing. That really isn't, because the NBA is like their big brother. They follow them to follow in their footsteps to know what the right thing to do is.
So what I'm taking from what you're saying, though, is like this team has gotten a lot tougher over this 48-hour period, because from the last I checked, like we had a real soft team on our hands. My whole life we've been kind of talking about this Maple Leaf team who, when their back's against the wall, or later on when they actually do make the playoffs and the whistles get put away, they have no bite. They have no bite back. All we ever do is complain about cheap, dirty stuff done to the Maple Leafs, but never is it ever like, oh, wow, they got away with one there. Oh, wow, look at how heavy they've been kind of pushing back. And then you point out it's probably been since that era of the Maple Leafs that we've kind of seen not just a physical brand of hockey, but more of a bully brand of hockey, right? Where you try to punk me, but I'm going to punk you in the end, right? That's kind of what I'm getting from what you're saying. And I think that is true, because in the last 48 hours, like the script has flipped so much that you're reading Twitter leading into the Saturday night game, and this team is known as like the Boston Bruins this year. For some reason or another, we've got a team that, like, I know we only had one fine coming out of these two games, correct? Correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah,
it's
the
just
Thornton
Joe
fine.
Thornton's fine on, was it the hit on Perot? Somebody.
Yeah.
Somebody insignificant. It wasn't.
Yeah, it was the elbow to the head. Yeah.
As they're kind of coming through the, outside of the zone, he just
or the shoulder to the head. It might not have been an elbow. I don't.
Thornton's one of those guys who we're going to get into, because I think his brand of hockey has definitely changed in the last little bit. He came into this season on the top line with Matthews and Marner, producing. Left early with a rib fracture and missed, I want to say 2 weeks max, 3 weeks of the season. And ever since he came back, he's been like a bottom six guy that I think we said on a recent pod, if he had a different name, he probably wouldn't even be getting the opportunities he's getting. Just they're trying to probably get him back on this moving train. Well, I don't know about you, but like just seeing the change, like I know he fought Kadri years ago, and I know he's got a little bit of an edge to him, but it does definitely seem like he's taken on a whole new role, and he's like happy with playing that kind of role. Does that make sense to you, what I'm saying here? Like he's approaching this as, fine, like I'm the big mean guy and I can cross check you, break my stick over you, grab another one and do it again. And you know what I mean? It feels like he's the guy that's willing to kind of take one for the team. And I never thought I'd see that. Not with a guy like Joe Thornton. He's going to go into the Hall of Fame for just his playmaking alone. So I'm not too sure where the whole conversation of dirty comes up, other than the fact that what I'm seeing is a team with veteran guys, a team with pieces that they've specifically brought in to kind of bite back, doing exactly that. And Thornton is one that might surprise you, but he's reached that part of his career where here we are. He's going to do what he can to help the team win a cup. He's never won. He's still chasing that. So, do you see any of the plays that happened? We're going to talk about the Sandine stuff later on, so ignore that one. Do you see any of the stuff that happened over these two games dirty in any regard? That's kind of what I'm getting at.
No, none of what happened in the last two games comes even close to anything Nazem Kadri did as a Toronto Maple Leaf.
Okay,
right?
there's a good way to look at it.
There's a good parameter if you want to look at it, because Nazem Kadri walked the line a lot, and a couple key times in the playoffs, he crossed the line. So there's a guy you can look back to, recent history, Leaf fans and non-Leaf fans even, and look back to if you want to talk about dirty plays. The Ehlers hit didn't even happen on or the Ehlers injury didn't even happen on dirty play. You know what it happened on? It happened on Jake Muzzin deciding to be tougher. Right now, there's a situation you can watch the hit happen. Jake Muzzin comes around the back of the net, and Ehlers comes in up in this way in front of the net. It goes to hit Jake Muzzin, and instead of being soft and allowing the hit to happen and go into the boards, Jake Muzzin went stiff, and he's a big boy, a lot bigger than Nick Ehlers, right? So he got stiff, and Nick Ehlers crunched against a big Jake Muzzin body, and those shoulders squished in, and he got a shoulder injury. And so it wasn't even on a dirty play, Winnipeg Jets fans, that that he got hurt on. So I don't know what the dirty label is, but I do like it. Bring it on. You want to call us dirty? Fine. I love it. I love it. If this is what dirty is in today's NHL, then I want more of it. It's not suspendable stuff. It's not stuff that's with intent to injure. No. It's with intent to be tough. It's with intent to, I'm not going to lay down for you anymore and let you run over us. We're going to restore the proper respect to the crest and to the name of the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yeah, let's not forget, this is the pink beanie wearing Austin Matthews, William Nylander Maple Leafs that we're talking about here. There has been no flip of the script where this team is now dirty. It's just it's a maturity and a kind of safety net that you now have with guys that can handle the physical play. But I want to go all the way back to the Wednesday night game or the Thursday night game, where I think the pattern showed through in both games, but immediately the Jets go down 2 goals. Like immediately, it's 2 quick ones, right? And their response to being down in that game is, it's not dirty by any means, but it's chippy and it's very physical hockey. It's Paul Maurice Winnipeg Jets style hockey. And I'll make this point again later on when we wrap up. But in 2 straight games, the Jets should not have been pushed around by the Maple Leafs, and they were. They're a bigger, stronger, tougher team, especially on their forecheck. You take guys like Blake Wheeler and Mark Scheifele and Pierre-Luc Dubois, and you get down 2 goals in a game. And I'm telling you, man, on a Thursday night, when I watched TJ Brody deke a check so hard that Pierre-Luc Dubois smashed open the rink door, it would have been charging if he made contact on Brody. Again, this is when the Jets go down 2 goals. Okay, early in a game, they have to turn the script of some sort in this game. They have to do something to impose their will on the game. But I want to point out that both of these Winnipeg Jets Maple Leafs games this week, the physicality and the chippiness was both times engaged by Winnipeg, because we're not talking about a Maple Leaf team that goes out looking for this type of hockey. They don't play this style of hockey. They just don't. And that's why we argue that they're soft, because this is not the kind of hockey they like to get involved in. They like high scoring, fast puck moving style. They don't like watching their defenseman Rasmus Sandin have to protect himself 3 straight shifts and then have that third one be the most vicious hit you've ever seen. It seems like, right? They don't really play hockey that way. And correct me if I'm wrong, but the Jets both times took what was a deficit early on in the game and applied one of the more physical approaches you can to a game, where they were trying to wear down the defense with forechecking. They were making physical plays, and they got punked by both times. They got the Leafs in a mood, and the Leafs bit back. And you see a guy like Thornton who will break a stick over a young guy, doesn't care. He's trying to show, like, listen, man, it's game time. And I think that's kind of, you would kind of put me forth with this point. It's like the fact that we're getting close to the end of the season and the playoffs are just around the corner. This is the kind of team that you want to see, where if you want to play our style of hockey, we're going to beat you. But if you want to play your style of physical hockey and try to wear us down, like we have the tools to beat you there too. I don't think any of it was really dirty except for the Thornton fine. But again, it's one of those you're trying to like kind of swat the flies away. Doesn't it feel like that to you? It's like the same with the Sandin hit. Well, I guess we're leading into it so much. We're going to get into it here. But you're trying to swat the flies away, in my opinion. I'll let you take over and give me some opinions. But
Yeah. Well, speaking on the Thornton fine, I Perot's a small guy. Thornton's not a small guy. Did Thornton mean to hit him? Yeah, but did he mean to clobber his head? I don't know. I don't think so. And I think that's why it's just a fine and not a suspension from player safety. And
you had Foligno run a guy from behind in the first game, technically, and there was no call on that. So you had Jets fans a little bit disappointed. You had Galchenyuk with the awkward hit on Lowry, and it was really not intentional at all. So there's a couple of pieces in there. That's all I'm trying. I'm missing out on some of those things, so I wanted to add them in.
Yeah, I was going to speak on Foligno and how he actually jumped into that game and with no practice with the team, he was able to have his presence felt be impactful in the game. And you spoke about Dubois running around. What I noticed in that game was Foligno was face checking his former teammate, and he was keeping him in line eventually after a certain point, and he was very noticeable. Obviously, he got the one assist. It would have been nice for him to get 2 assists in the game. Yeah. But Foligno has done exactly what they needed him to do in replacement of Zach Hyman. But speaking of a tough team in the Winnipeg Jets, man, they're a beat up team. Like Nick Ehlers didn't blow his shoulder up against the Toronto Maple Leafs. That's over time, right? And then the Muzzin hit was the straw that broke the camel's back. Blake Wheeler had a concussion against the Leafs a couple weeks back, and this was one of his first games back. And there was a moment when he was sitting on the bench in the third period, and I remember the commentator speaking on it late in the third period. He had his head between his hands or in his lap. And he was in some obvious distress, and it's a situation where this tough team may be pushing too hard, and it's going to be detrimental leading into the playoffs. So yeah, Leafs showing that the Leafs showing that they can play a tough style game, but maybe Winnipeg trying to play too tough, and I think it might have a negative impact come playoff time, because if Blake Wheeler isn't 100%, then you're really going to have a struggle on that top 6, because he's the glue. He's the guy that makes things go for them. Scheifele's great. Lowry's great, but for me, it's Blake Wheeler that makes everything go.
See, I think that last game of the season, it's going to have to be a real chill game, because just based on this week, the way that, like I said, both times Winnipeg comes out throwing everything they've got at Toronto, and they end up losing both times. They end up losing players in the process. Like the Leafs are only missing Hyman right now, and Freddie's another story that we
That's
hear.
That's a Hutchison game.
Yeah, pretty much, because or Riddick, I guess, is the guy that goes in there now. It does sound like Freddie's skating, and potentially maybe that'll be a game that Freddie gets in, because it's maybe more of a throwaway. But then again, this is where the big debate comes in. I don't see anybody trying to take liberties in that final game, but I kind of see Sandin maybe even down the road being a guy that is going to potentially receive a little bit of hate or punishment or whatever you want to say. And I think the sad thing there is, like, I don't know if he's going to deserve it, because the way I see that hit,
it was clean. It was clean. He just used his leverage.
Yeah, and there's going to be 2 of us on the show that think that way. But again, there's a lot of Jets fans, and even one I know personally, who sees it in a way I can't ignore. I think they have a point, but I also think, again, I'm trying to make up the point ahead of time to say, if the Jets hadn't come out in both of those games and played that way, I don't think this hit even would have occurred. And here's why. Like Wheeler comes into that corner just like flying. He's reaching out. Yes, he's reaching for the puck, but you cannot tell me, nobody can tell me in that moment that Wheeler's not going to go right through Sandin. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. It's really hard for me to say that he's not going to, especially because of the tone of the game then and the tone of the game previous between both teams. Maybe if we're at the last game of the season, maybe we're at the first game of the season, maybe if it's 2 teams that haven't out of nowhere developed this real quick rivalry. But the way that play unfolded, and the way that Sandin, our guy Steve Dangle pointed this out in his LFR yesterday, if you watch the shifts ahead of the one we're speaking of, Sandin is being chased around by guys, and
he's a small guy on the ice.
He's a small guy, and he takes one hit that's already enough. Where I think it was Perot again. Isn't it convenient? It's always this guy jumps and even I'm quoting Steve on this. It doesn't look like it's a high hit, but it definitely looks like it's roughing when you got two hands right in the gloves of somebody's face, or two gloves right in somebody's face. When you're following through on a hit right into somebody's head like that, it's a little bit kind of suspect. And the point again I'm trying to make is like if the game hadn't have been going the way it was leading up to that specific play and that hit, then I don't even know if it even happens. I don't know if Sandin feels the need to do that, right? But in the moment when you've got a guy like Blake Wheeler coming off of a concussion, you hate seeing somebody go down like that. But an elbow to the face seems to me like a keeping the flies off routine. Like if you're going to actually chip this puck in on me and expect me to not get run over, then you're going to have to take a shoulder or an elbow to the face. And I got to give kudos to Sandin for having the balls to do that. When you look at the weight difference, like Sandin's what, 5'10", 185 pounds, and Wheeler's 6'5" or 6'6", 230 pounds. So your mentality is I got to protect myself in that situation. So a lot of Jets fans taking this whole dirty narrative and kind of balling it all up and putting it right on that specific play right there, saying, "Look, this is how dirty the Leafs can be." And I'm sorry, but in
Sandin
another
for
game
me.
that wouldn't have happened. It wouldn't even have happened that way if the Jets hadn't instigated it for 2 straight games. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah, well, and I mean the hit. While it walked the line, he's protecting himself. If Wheeler doesn't want to get hit, like you said, Wheeler would have plowed right through him.
Don't go in there like that.
He's a guy who has been hurt before. He knows what it's like to get hurt by a hit. He had been hit earlier in the game, like you had said. So he's not just going to sit there and take it. He's got to learn to defend himself. And he defended himself. Does it suck what happened or what the outcome of the hit was? Yes, but was it a dirty play? No, it wasn't a dirty play. And for me, if it's going to be that way, if someone's going to want Sandin to answer the bell, Sandin does not see the ice against the Winnipeg Jets without Wayne Simmons. 100%. He's the guy. He's the guy who and that's fine. You could say that because guess what? Wayne Simmons is on the first power play. Wayne Simmons is on the third line, and Sandin wouldn't be playing anything but third pair minutes. And they have been talking about a possibility, or people have been talking about a possibility of him being on the first power play to try and get something going on there. So it wouldn't be too difficult to have Wayne Simmons on the ice every time with Rasmus Sandin because he doesn't need to fight. If someone wants to fight him, there should be someone there to step in and say, "No, you can fight me if you want to fight my little guy."
I don't even know if he's going to need to fight. But again, the way that I watched Dubois have no care for TJ Brody whatsoever, and this is in game 1, and somebody has to have seen what I'm talking about. Dubois takes like 8 strides at Brody, and Brody's like an experienced veteran defenseman, so he knows how to make the play and spin off the check all in one, and he does it. But the moment that he does that, and Dubois goes like flying into that corner, and the door, it's one of the rink doors for like the service guys to come in and scrape the ice at the whistle. It flies open. And you're like, I'm sorry, that door was like, you hit that thing so hard, you jarred it open. Like, it was bad. And again, I look at that and I say, Sandin's the kind of guy who late in a game, late in a season, when you've taken out Blake Wheeler like that, I'm sorry, but this is like one of those rivalry creating hits where I think the Jets are going to find ways to forecheck Sandin as hard as he's ever been forechecked. And again, going back to kind of Sandin's mentality in that play, he's been hurt bad already in his professional career. He's been run in the AHL. He's been run multiple times that he's slowly learning what TJ Brody has learned to do. And that's to see that charge coming in and make the play to get out of it before you injure yourself. So
let him eat the boards, right?
Yeah. So I don't even know if Sandin's going to have to fight so much, but I do think he's going to be a target for like how.
I don't want him to fight. I'm just saying someone might try to rag him, and if someone's there trying to rag him, you need someone to come in and.
You know what's crazy? You know what's crazy though is I actually think if Sandin had to drop the gloves, I would put money on him right now. Just the edge that he plays with, like he looks like. I
don't want it though. It breaks his hand on someone's face.
Absolutely not.
No, thank you.
But if you had to, I think Sandin has proven it's just the way that he played in the World Juniors. I specifically remember a Finnish guy coming up trying to forecheck him in a corner, and he put a stick in the guy's face, and the Finnish kid goes down, and you're like, oh my God, that's Sandin. He plays with an edge. I specifically remember that. So no, it didn't surprise me that he felt the need to kind of protect himself in that play with Wheeler. Yeah, it surprised me that Wheeler went down like a sack of bricks. And I don't think if Sandin ever found himself in a fight, I'd be super worried because I think he kind of is a tougher guy than he looks. But in the end, if those games aren't going the way that they're going, a defenseman doesn't feel the need to have to protect themselves. How many times did you see in those Bruins Leafs series when Jake Gardiner would get caught behind his own net and a guy like Jake DeBrusk or you name it would be like, they would take 5 strides and then glide into him and absolutely blow him up, and you'd see him kind of labor to the bench and come out the next shift and take another one and labor to the bench, and by game 4, game 5, game 6, those guys don't want to go behind their net to retrieve pucks. That's the way Winnipeg had approached both of these games this week. And I found it really funny that a bigger, stronger, tougher, probably a better forechecking team like Winnipeg was able to start, attempting to turn the tide of the game, get bit back, and then falter. It's a great test for the Maple Leafs. It shows that they're heading into playoffs, that they can handle that physical. I'd love to see them play against those Boston Bruins right now, because I think Boston wouldn't get away with much. Nazem Kadri on the roster or not, you wouldn't need a guy to go out and get suspended by trying to take out Jake DeBrusk on a retaliation play. There would be just more natural toughness in that lineup. So just a nice tight bow to wrap up what I think was a clean hit on Sandin's part. A really, I appreciate the way Winnipeg came out trying to be physical, but a really smart, well-handled Maple Leafs roster that bit back when it was necessary, got away with some stuff, and capitalized in both games. They got a team that was kind of, they were under their skin, and I'm so used to seeing that happen to the Maple Leafs. So it's very funny to see them be called dirty when they're not they're not a dirty team at all. They just played very well against a team that thought they could impose their will on them. They no longer can. You no longer can do that to the Maple Leafs.
My biggest takeaway from the 2-game set with the Winnipeg Jets was the amount of goals that the Leafs were able to put by Connor Hellebuck.
He got pulled on 6 shots in the first game, eh?
Yeah, he got pulled on 6 shots, 3 goals, and 2 pretty stinky ones.
And he wasn't happy.
He definitely wasn't happy. He didn't want to be pulled. But alpha males, alpha dogs, they never do, right?
Our boy Jack Campbell would have said it. I want to be pulled after the first one, guys.
Yeah, Mr. Feelings himself. That's a positive you can take from, right? Because you look at previous games against the Jets, even when the Leafs have won, Connor Hellebuck has stood on his head. He has done things and made saves that no goalie should ever make, especially in goals that the Toronto Maple Leafs especially are used to being able to score. They were all over
him last night too, man. He made some amazing saves on Matthews last night. It was 4-1. It could have been 6-7-1 the way Hellebuck played.
It could have been, but they got those 4 and I believe 8. 7 on him in the 2 games, and I haven't done the research on the amount of goals they scored against him previously in the season series, but I would hazard a guess to say that that's probably 3 games worth of goals, if not 4 games worth of goals in the previous set. So that's my biggest takeaway, and also Jack Campbell, first game against them, a little bit rough in the first and second. Little tough, under 800 save under 900 in the 890s on the save percentage, but he had a stellar third period in the first game, and then he built off that in game number 2, right? And he played even better. He made saves that he needed to make, and it seems like we've got the confident Jack Campbell back, and that leads us into who was at practice today, Ryan.
Yeah, it sounds like Freddie's getting healthier and healthier. I think things are still pretty vague with him, right? We don't get a guaranteed he will start a game before the regular season.
He spoke to the media. Did you hear the media?
Well, it's hard to understand when he's speaking to the media. I end up falling asleep. That's the one thing.
Well, my thing is I don't think the Leafs would have had him speak on a Zoom call to the media unless they were ready for him to answer the questions that media would have wanted to answer. And Frederik Andersen, as you know, even though he's droll and he's very Kawhi Leonard like, he's not going to lie to you, right? And he had an interesting answer. It was the knee. It wasn't the groin. It wasn't a hip. It was a knee, and it was something he had been dealing with for a while, and he felt that he didn't have enough strength in it anymore to push off, and he wasn't confident in his play. So he decided to take the time to get better, and now he's feeling great. And he participated in his first full practice in over a month with the Toronto Maple Leafs. So,
question for you though: What about the knee? Though the knee is one of those things where it doesn't change my opinion. Unfortunately, I would have liked to have heard, "Oh yeah, it was this, and I had surgery, and nobody knew about it, and I'm healthy." But no, it's not. It's I didn't.
Surgery takes a lot longer than a month to get over.
Yeah, and yet, but you're a guy who on the show has talked about knee surgeries, and you've had your knee replaced, right? Or
Yeah,
at least
well, not
surgery.
replaced, but I had my ACL, my MCL, my LCL all replaced. But I still have the actual
You
knee.
got the real knee in there still.
Yeah,
It's the
the
only
real,
real
the
piece
only
in there.
thing. Yeah, well, no, actually, they took my. If we want to get into it, it's all natural. It's not pig. It's they took my part of my hamstring, which apparently I was born with extra hamstring. That's what the surgeon said.
Wow,
50% larger than a
congratulations.
guy my size. So he took part of my hamstring and replaced all of my ligaments with natural stuff. So yeah, it's better than the day I was born.
He's like, actually,
Um,
there was just enough, not enough hamstring. So there's a 2% Laffy Taffy and 98% hamstring in there. You'll be fine.
there's a paperclip. Yeah. I'm held together by the Animaniacs. They were my doctor, right?
But
They
my question is though,
me
like
together.
with Freddie, like I understand it's a strength issue and it's a lingering knee issue, but like you're a goaltender, man.
It's
I need a guy to
okay.
be 100% healthy coming back into
So
so I wasn't
same
super
reason.
confident hearing that.
Same reason Zach Hyman's out right now, right?
Yeah.
Zach Hyman isn't going to get surgery on that MCL. It's an MCL grade 2 probably or grade 1. I don't know the exact classification. Sprain, right? So it's rest. And so that could have been the same with Fred. The ligaments could have been strained, stretched out too much, and they get their natural elasticity back, right? So they need to tighten up and he needed to rest it, relax it, stay off of it, and let the ligaments heal naturally. And that could have possibly been, I'm not his doctor. I have no idea, obviously, but coming from a guy who has had knee issues in his life, it's very, very possible that he just had a strained knee, a couple ligaments in there that were just pulled, like when you pull a rubber band and it loses its elasticity, right?
So it needs to sit out in the cold until it regains it all. I get you.
Yeah. So he just needed a little bit of time, and there's speculation of when he's going to come back. Only 8 games left on the schedule for the Leafs. The possibilities are limited as to where you want to get him in there, and how many games you want to get him in. And then there's the LTIR question.
Didn't you bring that up? If you were to put the guys who are hurt, like Hyman could give
Zach
you
Bogosian is now
$2.5 million.
bad news on Zach Bogosian today that he had an MRI. He's out 4 weeks minimum, so he's gone for even the first round of the playoffs. So you can take that money and
you don't quite have enough to get Freddie back there, though. That's the only issue.
Then you could take Zach Hyman and you can put him on the LTIR because he's not coming back for the rest of the regular season. I wouldn't think so. Just because why? Right. 8 games. You really don't have much at stake. You almost have first place locked up. A couple more of these games in the bag, and you could lock up first place, the number 1 seed. So why would you bring him back at all? And in regards to Freddie, his first game back will probably most likely be in the AHL. On a conditioning stint, because the Marlies, they're set to come back here. They've just received approval from the AHL to extend their season so they can finish off their season. So Frederik Andersen will be able to go down there without coming off of LTIR yet, to play a conditioning stint with the Marlies to get some games in. So most likely first game with the Marlies in the AHL, and then maybe in to get a game or two with NHL competition before the end of the regular season. But I doubt he plays in that last game against the Winnipeg Jets. I really doubt it, just simply because you want to have rested your goaltender going, especially when you got nothing on the line, right? You start your backups, you start your B squad team to try and keep as many guys healthy as possible.
See, that's where
Man, coming from a guy, I'm a fan.
It'd be nice to have him back before the end of the season, but or at any point in the season. But if he's not playing in a Leaf jersey, AHL games are one thing, that's fine. But if this Leafs team looks real good after these last 2 games, right? They look fine with the goaltenders they've got, and they look pretty solid. You know what I mean? Like
better with Andersen.
Fight back. I don't want to put a guy in to the net who hasn't played a game in.
You're telling me you'd rather have Dave Riddick start games than Frederik Andersen?
I'd rather have
Dave
Jack Campbell
Riddick after what
right now.
Yeah, no, you can't do that. Jack Campbell's proven he can't do that. He can't start that many games in a row. He needs time to recover. He needs time to unload all of the emotions out of his brain that he builds up in each game. I don't know exactly what it is, but he's not He's not Frederik Andersen. He's not a number
I know
one.
that. I know he's not Freddie. It's
he's
just
not a 60 game a year goaltender.
Is
he's not.
Freddie anymore?
No, he might not be, but he's definitely capable of giving you, like, if he's not 60 game Freddie, then he can give you that 60 game Freddie for 40 games.
Yeah, it's been so long. I'm realizing I haven't seen a good Frederik Andersen in net for so long that I just need to see it again.
And you
because
say
I
that
can't believe it.
You say that, but he's got a career plus 900 save percentage
Oh, I
before
know.
this year.
I just mean how he's looked for
So-
18 months. He's looked not good, man.
Yeah,
We know that.
But like when you look at his career stats on Hockey DB, he
For
has
sure.
faced the most shots of any goaltender in the NHL, and he's got a career above 9. I think a 910 plus.
Oh, he's a
save
good goalie.
percentage.
He has
Except
been a
for
great goalie.
1 year, except for one year, and that's this year, not last year. This year. Last year still finished above 900.
I think I just can't get over this idea that I think he's injured beyond repair, and I don't like the conversation continuing. I'm healthy. I wasn't healthy. I'm telling you when I'm healthy. Okay, I'm healthy. If this season comes down to Freddie Andersen deciding whether he's going to play or not, which it still seems to be, they're throwing away what's been such a successful couple of months.
I think it's inevitable that he plays. It's inevitable that he plays. The fact that he spoke to the media, if he wasn't going to play, Ryan, he wouldn't have spoke.
Yeah,
he wouldn't have.
I got to see him sooner than the playoffs. I know AHL is one
Yeah,
thing.
he'll get a couple NHL games in, but there's only 8 games left. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they play against Ottawa. I know I have the schedule written down here.
Yeah.
But you get him in against a couple of the softer teams, right? And get his feet wet, right? You don't want to put him in against somebody who has a stake in actually maybe running Frederik Andersen.
Yeah, but again, that's like if the guy's healthy, he's healthy. You know what I mean?
But a healthy goalie being run can still get injured.
That could happen any game, any season, any day of the year, right? That's just I think again, I wouldn't be so nervous if we hadn't have been talking about this exact situation for so long. And I feel like my mind, I was at ease the second I found out Freddie's on the Alti IR, because remember we had that take on air. I thought, dude, he's never played another game in a Leaf jersey, and I hate to say it, but like now that he's the main guy, if he's obviously the main guy, but now that the question still revolves around, is he going to start, when he's going to start, how he's going to play? I need all the answers, all the questions answered in that very first start. I need him to come out, play amazing, and look like the Freddie Andersen from 2018. Not 2018-19, not last year and not this season. I need like the Freddie that was like getting the Freddie chance, right? Again, there's no crowd, so he's not getting them regardless.
Even if Jack Campbell starts game 1.
That Freddie in so long.
Even if Jack Campbell starts game 1 of the playoffs, Frederik Andersen will start game 2. I'm not saying he's coming back to kick Jack Campbell out. Jack Campbell's played well enough that he deserves to be a part of this part of a tandem, right? But also you look at the past, Frederik Andersen has never had the ability to be able to rely on a guy like Jack Campbell. So we're talking about, can Freddie get back to it? But maybe Freddie can a lot easier than he would have been able to previously, because he's got a guy he knows. Okay, you know what? I'm giving it all this game, and if I don't have it all next game, Jack can take it, and I don't have to worry about it, right? And then I can give it all the next game. Right. And so they can play off of each other. Yeah. You win in the NHL nowadays with 2 high quality goaltenders. Right.
And we don't like what Riddick has done. So he's out, right? He doesn't count yet.
Well, Riddick is.
I thought he played good.
Another Dave Hutchison. I don't know why they gave up a 3rd round pick for him. I really don't.
He played good in those first 2 starts. That's it. And then when he came in relief for Campbell when Campbell got pulled, that fateful.
I just called him Dave Hutchison too, not Dave Riddick.
And I didn't even notice. That's But I also thought, like, listen, this guy should be able to make a save. And then the last game he played, the Vancouver game, where he kind of lost all of that, any of that good credit.
Yeah, that one goal where he had his legs basically wide open.
Yeah,
there was a triangle about like this.
Here in this market, we treat that like we'll never see that guy make a big save again. Right?
He shouldn't. He really.
I don't know. I think he's still a good goalie. I think he had a bad game. I think I've seen Freddie play like that. That's what I'm trying to say. I've seen Freddie fundamentally bad.
The way he played was fundamental. He did not, that whole game, he did not look comfortable at all. He was jabbing at it. He was jumping at it. He was not settled. He was
And I think the
overactive in the
same can be
crease.
said for Freddie for the last like 18 months.
I don't
That's
think
what I was
so. I
trying to
mean,
say.
I
That's
know
all I'm trying
Freddie
to
has
say.
had some bad games, but you cannot put that Dave Riddick game anywhere close to anything Freddie Anderson has done. The only time Freddie Anderson has let in some really bad goals is when he's quit on the team because the team has quit playing defense on him.
That's fair.
I can go ahead and go back and show you specific points in time when Frederick Anderson has fully quit because there's no defense being played. So why should I stop these pucks if you guys aren't going to try and get in front of them or play some defense
I agree.
and stop the pucks from coming on net. But he has never fundamentally played as poorly as Dave Riddick played in that game. That was just disgusting. That was horrible. That was some of the worst. That is not NHL level goaltending. That is not AHL level goaltending. You're supposed to have your stick down there, Ryan. If you've got that giant gap in between your pads, your 5-minute major. Dave Riddick.
That's him. He
That's
gets
it.
it. I don't even have one this
getting
week. You just reminded me of it. The 5-minute major. Oh my god.
Like, what are you doing? You got me so fired up because I forgot about that save. Or that goal, that non-save.
There was
That
two.
But that one specifically made me so mad. Your stick is over here. Yeah. On the post, there's no one over there. There's one guy coming in. Now, you want to talk about the Wayne Gretzky clapper that he let into? Like, come on.
Here's why that one bothered me. Here's why the second one bothered me. Because the one you're upset about was that one came first, right?
No, that was second. The clapper came first.
Maybe we're talking about the same goal. I thought there was one that went 5-hole and one that went under his pad.
Yeah, I don't know where the clapper went, but I know that the one where he had that massive triangle in his pads and his stick was like in orbit somewhere because it didn't matter.
Better way for me to put it is, of the two really, really egregious ones, the one that actually bothered me more was the second, because the first one, like, you can literally say, wow, oh my, like, that sucks. And then for somebody to come down the wing like 5 minutes later and just rip one under your pad, I was like, no, now I hate him. It was like a real quick flip of the switch, man. It went from being like, oh, that's tough. Like he's still Big Save Dave. No wonder he's got the nickname Big Save Dave. Like he makes big saves and he lets in that. Okay, that's fine. And then like the next shot was, I think the one, maybe we're both talking about the same goal. And I put a tweet out there. I said, now's the time we learn from Calgary fans that Big Save Dave was an ironic nickname.
I quoted your tweet more than once to a couple of people. Like it was an ironic nickname. Yeah, he's just a gigantic
like calling a guy, tiny when he's big. You know what I mean?
JD Bunkus said that why did we trade a 3rd-round pick for the Czech Michael Hutchison? Right, like it's literally exactly what he was. Man, that was a Wayne Gretzky. That clapper, like, how does that go in? Like,
it's right along the ice under the pad. We can laugh now because they beat the crap out of the Winnipeg Jets in back-to-back games.
Yeah,
but
5-minute major. Dave Riddick, never see the ice again as a Toronto Maple Leaf. You go straight to free agency. You do not come back. You can collect your paycheck.
Collect $200.
Yeah, you collect your pay. Go to Robida Island. I don't care. Like I got my guy back. I got Frederick Anderson back. I don't ever need. I would rather Hutchison start than Riddick. I am not kidding.
Hutchison's looked okay. Kidding. Yeah, he just every time Hutchison starts, he makes a few saves, and then you go,
battles.
But there's somebody out there. There's somebody out there better than you. And then with Riddick, it's like, yeah, but you're Big Save Dave. Isn't that crazy? Once you get a nickname, you're just all of a sudden a little bit better than like a standard backup. It's awesome. What have we missed here? I just want to make sure we point out
North Division playoff race. We have the North Division playoff race.
Let me point this out real quick. Marner got 2 beauties in both games. He's getting the back of the net lately because
Johnny T on fire.
That's the other one. He's been coming in hot in April. But man, Marner with 2 lucky, like that one off the back of the stanchion, kind of fooled Hellebuck in game 2 there Saturday night. Like he's finding ways to put that puck in the back of the net. He scored the empty netter from Foligno, and then he scored that like a weird slap shot over Hellebuck's glove. I think that might have been the first goal of the game on Thursday night, and then the next 2 were stinkers that got Hellebuck pulled. But I just wanted to give Marner the shout out because we never talk about him scoring goals. And I also thought when Foligno gave him that puck on the empty net, when you really look, Marner has his head up for a split second going like, how do I get this back to this guy in his first game as a Leaf? Eh? And then he puts it in and picks it up right away because he knows.
Yeah, he was not happy when he put it in. He was not happy. He wanted Foligno to get that. Yeah,
but
for sure.
if Foligno had taken that shot at the net, guarantees he misses and we go, oh, look at he's trying to score. And then he gets it right to Marner. Marner, I swear, the moment that Marner has that puck, he's looking like, fuck, I can't get this back to you, man. Are you serious? I'm going to have to put this in. It's too bad. But yeah, I wanted to point out him. And Tavares, stupid Steve Simmons had an article. This Tavares that they paid all that money for. Listen, dude, it's been the Tavares since day one that they paid all that money for. That's why he's the captain of the team. That's why he does literally everything, both ends of the ice, and never gets credit for it. Like some people,
I was gonna say you want to talk about Joe Thornton earlier and how he's got some fire. John Tavares has found some fire. He's got his legs are back. He's got that burst back. The burst that I said that he's lost, right? Like he had lost a step. He was slower and he was laboring on the. I don't know if there was an injury. I don't know if he wasn't sleeping because of the child at home.
Maybe.
I don't know what was going on. Something was going on, and he got it right because, like him or not, Steve Simmons is not incorrect with the title of that article, because there was 6 months ish of NHL season where we were wondering, was this a mistake? Right, because John Tavares had kind of gone away. I had said on this show previous that he lost a step, and that if I were to trade one of them, it would be John Tavares if possible. Right?
Well, not this John Tavares. Day one,
not this John Tavares.
Day one, though. You got to just look at the way he plays. He doesn't need foot speed.
But normally with age,
he doesn't.
Normally, he's not Joe Thornton though. Normally with age, right, you decrease, right?
Yeah.
It's not always where you're able to keep up through your 30s and into your 40s and be able to carry teams and be a top offensive threat, right?
Right.
So when I see a decrease in speed in his 30s for John Tavares, the red lights go off. It's like, okay, well, now this is probably going to continue, and we're probably going to be talking about a guy who can't skate in the next couple of years, right? So obviously, like I said, something changed, man, because he's got that burst back.
You know, and I believe he's better with him.
16 points in the last 11 games
in April, yeah, and Willie's been playing incredible since that kind of almost benching, the COVID scare, and then the missing that's why he was almost benched, because he missed a meeting. He was like 5 minutes late to a team meeting last week. But like the one goal last night, the Saturday night, when he had the great back check on it was 4-on-4, great back check, turns it into 2-on-1 over to our boy Johnny T, big rep. So like, if we're gonna talk about how well Johnny T's played, it's his partner there in Nylander.
The whole line really,
so well.
And getting Galchenyuk back there is going to help them. I think he fits in.
Yep.
Like he wasn't not fitting in with Marner and Matthews, but he fits in really well. John Tavares was getting 12.5 shot attempts per game with Galchenyuk on his wing. So he was adding more. Pardon me. He was adding more offensive flair to that line that Ilya Mikheyev wasn't able to bring. Ilya Mikheyev brought the speed, but he didn't have the finesse that Alex Galchenyuk has, and he's able to get the puck in situations and get it to John Tavares for chances more often. So that's why he's back there, and it's a good fit.
Do you like Foligno on that first line? You think when Hyman comes back, they have him on a line of his own on the third line there, or what do you think happens? He goes up to the Marner Matthews line, and Foligno comes down.
I think they're interchangeable.
Yeah,
in certain situations, right? Foligno is an older Zach Hyman, right? So a little
slower. If you talk about foot speed,
we don't know how Zach Hyman's knee is going to respond to coming back, right? So if you want to ease them in, right? You don't give them all the top minutes, right? So you get they're both used to playing with those guys at the time that Zach Hyman's going to be back in. They'll both be used to playing with the top line, and I believe Foligno will have third line minutes as well. Get used to playing with those guys, right? So they'll both be familiar with the situations, being able to switch in and out and be interchangeable, and they both play the same style of hockey, right? So yeah, you lose a little bit of foot speed, but I think you save Zach Hyman's knee and allow it to recover more, because I don't think he's going to be coming back 100%. No. In just a month after injury, after an MCL strain. He's going to want to come back, but it's not going to be 100. It might be 80, 85, even 90%. You still want him to be able to heal while playing, right? So if you can shelter him by interchanging him with Foligno, then I think that's the proper thing to do.
Next Leaf game would be Wednesday night versus Montreal. In Montreal, we talked about them having Cole Caulfield in the lineup, so I guess we'll get our first chance at seeing him if he's still playing. But you wanted to talk about the North Division before we move on to UFC?
Yes. Before we get on to UFC, the North Division has a playoff race. In the bottom, the Montreal Canadiens have been on a little bit of a tailspin. They won tonight 2-1 against Calgary Flames. Big win. Increases the spread to 6 from 4 against the Calgary Flames.
Yeah,
and
that was the game they needed to win right now.
Yeah, to 10 from 8 from the Vancouver Canucks. And I get it. You might be asking yourself, why the hell is John talking about the Vancouver Canucks in the same breath, in the same sentence and paragraph as the word playoffs? Well, believe it or not, Ryan, the Vancouver Canucks actually have a legitimate shot at possibly surpassing the Montreal Canadiens and making the playoffs in the North Division. Now they're losing tonight 2-1 to Ottawa, so it really takes a dent if they can't get this back to 8 points. But they have the most games remaining in the regular season for the Canucks. So for Montreal,
they're like 6 behind Montreal, and they're only 10 points. I see that right now.
Yeah, so Montreal has 7 of 9 games remaining against the top 3 teams in the division.
Oh wow!
5 of which are against the Leafs, or no, 4 of which are against the Leafs. Right, so that's a really tough schedule.
They've got the
Going
Raptors
to Calgary.
Schedule. I wanted to bring that up to you too later. Like, man, we're not going to talk NBA, so we'll just say it now. The Raptors, we hope they tank, They got a strong schedule coming up, so at least they have to play against some tough teams going up, as they battle for that 10th spot. Anyway, go ahead.
The Flames 6 points back now. But they have the easiest schedule with only 3 games on the remaining schedule against the top 3 teams.
Okay.
In the division, and they have a 4-pack against the Canucks.
Oh my goodness.
And then Vancouver has 14 games remaining on the schedule, including tonight, after tonight, with 9 of those against the top 3 teams in the division.
Oh my.
Facing Edmonton 5 times.
So this will be a miracle run if they can win
and
those
games. And
games.
they have 5 games in hand on Montreal.
Right.
So being 10 points back, if they win all of those 5 games in hand and keep pace with Montreal, they could be tied.
Oh, I see it hasn't updated here. Montreal's got their 47th game played now, and Vancouver's still playing 42. So it shows 6 game right now, but by within the next hour, it'll be back to a 5 game. Okay, I was confused by that for a second, but yeah, it's because Montreal's is already finished.
So as I give you all this, my question is what's the most likely scenario do you see happening? Do you see Calgary with the easiest schedule making a run and overtaking Montreal?
Yes.
Do you see Vancouver ripping off and just going through the NHL on some sort of resurgent run, a Cinderella story-esque situation where these guys come back from COVID? This is a Disney movie. They come back from an illness and they make the playoffs, and then they go on a run and win the Stanley Cup. I don't know if that's possible, but my point is, step 1, do you see it possible for Vancouver with 14 games remaining after tonight and 5 in hand on the Canadiens? Or is it most likely that the Canadiens finally get this thing in order and start winning games and put this all to bed?
Here's why it's exciting to me, John. I think to answer your question, I think the most likely thing that could happen is Calgary leapfrogging Montreal for that 4th spot. And the only reason I say that is because there's 4 games between now and the end of the season between the Habs and the Leafs that we're going to be queued up on. And I already made this point to my dad, saying, Dad, listen to this, man. Montreal's already been wavering a little bit, and now the fate of their playoffs could lie in the Maple Leafs' hands. If the Leafs decide we're going to come out and spank you in all 4 of those games and take all 8 of those points from Montreal, it happens, right? There's almost not a guarantee, but there's a huge chance that Calgary.
I believe it's 4 games in like 4 to 5.
Calgary would have to suck big time and lose every game at that point. Because I think right now it's 6 points. Yeah, Calgary. I guess it would have to be more of a push for Calgary. I didn't realize it was 6 points. You did say that.
It is 6 after tonight because they lost against if they had beat Montreal tonight, that was huge. If they had beat Montreal tonight, it would have been 2 points.
Yeah, and
they would have had the softest schedule, so it would have been alert here in Montreal. But now they've extended it to 6. I mean, you say how big the games against the Leafs would be. The games against Montreal and the Leafs would be for Calgary, but I think it's just as big for the Canucks, because if you can count on the Leafs to take the Canadiens down for 4 games, and then Mike Smith just got hurt for just had a little bit of a scare for the Edmonton Oilers. So if the goaltending is a question in Edmonton, and Vancouver goes on a run against their Western Conference foe in the Oilers, because they play the Oilers 5 and 4 in a row against the Oilers. So if they go on a run against the Oilers as the Leafs go on a run against the Canadiens, then I think this could end up really tight. I think the 5 games in hand really is going to come into play here. I can't believe I'm saying this, but I can see a world, and I'm 40% if we want to go Jerry's percentages. 40% that in the last 3 games of the regular season, the Vancouver Canucks are within 2 points of the Montreal Canadiens.
Okay, I feel you there. I'm gonna add a percentage of my own. I'm gonna say there's a 60% chance, more than half, just based on the way Montreal has been falling apart in the last month. Dominic Ducharme's record as the head coach there is abysmal. And they talk about maybe they have to fire Bergevin
Ooh,
in the offseason, right?
juicy bit of
Potentially.
juicy tidbit that came out today too.
Go for
I'll
it.
let you continue. Okay. So, like talking about Ducharme, Patrick Waugh signed with
Right.
an agency. So,
Right. I did see that.
there's questions abound as to which franchise Mr. Waugh could be possibly the next head coach of.
Yeah, the article I read was specifically titled "Patrick Waugh looking to make his return to the NHL coaching carousel." So there you go. It's that simple. That could be the answer for them. But again, I think it's even over. I want to say over 50. So I'm just going to go add 10. I'll go 60% that the Leafs just destroy Montreal in these upcoming games, and Calgary, of the two teams, they're the likely one to. I mean, tonight, like you said, is the one really that could have been the nail in the coffin if we look back on this pod. But that's I think 60% chance that Montreal continues to waver and Calgary is able to some way or another win the games that they need to. But here's the thing: if it is Vancouver, and if it is that storybook, clinch of the playoffs and maybe final game, they get their 2 points that they need, doesn't spell well for Toronto, because like the Leafs and Vancouver, that would be the matchup. Look at the way they've played Vancouver the last couple of games.
Yeah, yeah,
My
I
God.
know that's another way to look at it. Is the Toronto and Vancouver have had some spirited contests, and Toronto coming in on the losing end in the last
Sucked
2.
against them, man. Just don't start David Riddick in any of those playoff games, okay?
Yeah, definitely not. It would be interesting to see. We would have been robbed of a Montreal Toronto playoff
I
series
don't
yet
want to see
again.
that. Yeah.
I do.
No, I don't want
I
to see
would.
them get robbed. I want to see it
Oh,
happen. Yeah.
yeah.
No,
I was gonna say it's like it's been what, since the 70s since Toronto and Montreal have
I
faced
know.
off in the playoffs. So we would have been robbed of that if Vancouver does find a way to climb in. But I just, like, the writer in me, the storybook lover in me, just wants to see
Yeah, I can see
Vancouver
that.
just go on a tear and scare the crap out of the Montreal Canadiens. And honestly, if Montreal drops out of the playoffs here, does Bergevin get fired?
Yeah, that's kind of what I think. Like, he's had a long rope, and he seems to always, like, they keep commending him for some of the moves he makes in the long run. Like, I remember he's had the spotlight on him for the Subban and Weber trade, and end up working out for him. They had the spotlight on him for trading away Galchenyuk. It worked. He's traded away Domi and got Anderson. Everyone seems to kind of eventually like the moves he makes, even though in the moment people kind of question him. But yeah, they are one of those teams that kind of, especially if they don't make the playoffs, they just keep hurting their draft position if they're trying to become a better team. They're in that purgatory that we talk about with a lot of other teams, where they're competitive, they're scrappy, they're good, they've got good pieces that they're kind of wasting. Like Carey Price might never get a Stanley Cup if he spends his whole career there, and this is the way that they stay kind of built from a roster perspective. But it's, I don't know, maybe Bergevin, that's the end of the rope for him, just because of the fact that he's had this long, and he hasn't really been able to get them. I mean, it's hard to compete with teams like Edmonton, Winnipeg, and Toronto. They are fourth. It's not like they have
But they
a better
were
roster.
first.
They were.
What's French for 18 wheeler off a cliff, as they said on
Fair enough.
on Overdrive.
That's
right?
fair.
Like,
But all I'm saying is, like, with Bergevin, it's not like he's blessed with a Matthews, Scheifele and Dubois and Hellebuck, or Connor McDavid. Like, when you look at the division that Montreal has to compete in, they are going up against, like, they are kind of
Bozak,
punching
Phil
right along
Kessel,
their weight class. I don't think they have, right, unless they were to go kind of
James Van Riemsdyk,
full tank
Nazem
mode.
Kadri.
Yeah, like
What
those
did
are
Brian Burke have? 18 wheeler off a cliff. The Montreal Canadiens are exactly where the Toronto Maple Leafs were at a few years back when
But
they
how
had
does that get you
Phil
anywhere?
Kessel. It doesn't. But that's the problem, and that's probably why Bergevin will get fired. And it's partly why I think Montreal might be set up for this expansion
So
draft.
does he get
to
fired
actually
for a worse GM that's going to tank them? Is that what you're getting at?
No, I think he gets fired, and they decide that they're going to move on and try and build a franchise in the same way that Toronto built a franchise, which, yeah, you play bad and you get high draft picks, but you build around a young core.
Yeah.
I think Carey Price may have played his last season
Ooh, hot
for the
taker.
Montreal Canadiens. I think Patrick Waugh could possibly be headed to Seattle. Montreal exposes Carey Price, protects Jake Allen.
Whoa.
Carey Price has ties to the Seattle area. He played for the Tri-City Americans. His wife is from Washington State. He's a name. Patrick Waugh's a name. They're both familiar with the Montreal area, familiar with each other.
Jump down your throat when we post this podcast.
And I could fully see a world and a reality in which we live in where Carey Price no longer plays for the Montreal Canadiens, but he plays for the Seattle Kraken in the same way where Marc-Andre Fleury took his name and his profile to Vegas and sold the franchise to the area and was its first star player. And it gets Montreal out from underneath the massive contract that Carey Price is commanding right now. And it allows Montreal to move on and build a franchise properly, because right now what they're doing, the way they're doing it, it's just not working. It's something is incorrect. The recipe is wrong, and you need to scrap it and start over. You have pieces you can keep. Kotkaniemi is good. You have some Byron. You have Nick Suzuki, and you have some good pieces, right? But you need to fix. You need to start a new recipe. You can take some of those pieces and put it into that, but as it's constituted right now, it's just not working out. And I think that Carey Price would probably be willing to move on to another place, because it's just not working here in Montreal, and he wouldn't be in for a rebuild, not at his age. I'm sorry, no, that's not fair to him.
See, now that you say this, the Leafs are going to end up facing the Habs in the first round and lose to them. Now that you've said that, by the way, it's just the way it's going to go now. Yeah. It's
just
gonna
the
happen,
pessimist
man.
in you?
Not just the pessimist in me, but just the scrappiness of the Montreal Canadiens. I think part of the reason why they haven't.
No one's saying they're not scrappy. The Leafs with Kessel were scrappy.
Oh yeah, but I'm saying what they thought
took
maybe
they took the Bruins to 7.
But they thought they had better pieces, John. They thought they had Romanov, and they thought Suzuki was better than he is. And I think in the end, Montreal isn't as far away from being a better team than we think. But again, they might be held down by older guys. But who's to say that those older guys aren't the key veterans that they need to
Shea Weber doesn't look great either.
Yeah, but he's still a serviceable NHL player, and so is Carey Price. So I think, again, it's not that I'm necessarily just a diehard, pessimist, and that I know the Leafs are going to do something to make me disappointed. But when you see the way, like my buddy and I already talked about this, Leafs Habs in the first round, that doesn't guarantee the Leafs are going to win. It doesn't guarantee anything.
Oh no, there's no guarantees in the NHL.
All the track record ever says is like the Leafs find ways to lose instead of find ways to win. And Montreal, in my lifetime, is the scrappy team that finds ways to win.
The Los Angeles Kings won the Stanley Cup as the 8th seed.
There you go. And last season, Montreal didn't deserve to be in the playoffs and won a round and beat out Pittsburgh.
No, I understand they're scrappy, but it doesn't mean that they have what it takes and have the core built to be a contender for the Stanley Cup. It's one thing winning around. This is why I'm actually
just saying your Carey Price to Seattle take is telling me Montreal has beaten Toronto in the first round of the playoffs.
Oh, okay. This whole take of the Leafs need to win a round and blah blah blah. I don't want the Leafs to win a round. Are you kidding me? I don't care if the Leafs win one bleeping round.
Not if we're gonna.
I want the Leafs to win 3 rounds. I want the Leafs to win 3 rounds at least.
Cup final.
I want the Leafs to. I want the Cup final. And this team has the ability to do that. I don't see that with the Canadiens. Now, can they punch above their weight and win one series?
Yeah.
Yes. The Columbus Blue Jackets have done it year in and year out. The Columbus Blue Jackets did it to the Tampa Bay Lightning. Right? But it doesn't mean that the Columbus Blue Jackets had what it took to win the Stanley Cup. In the end, we realized that they didn't. And the Montreal Canadiens, as currently constituted, do not have what it takes to win the Stanley Cup. That is not coming from cockiness. That is not coming from Leaf fandom. That is just coming from a sober point of view and looking at what they have there.
You're right.
And Carey Price is not going to be in for a rebuild. So honestly, I'm sorry to your Habs friend, Habs fan friend. I'm sorry. I don't I'm not one of those haters. I don't hate teams. I went to watch the Ottawa Senators versus the New York Islanders when Phil Kessel played for the Maple Leafs in Ottawa. I drove to Ottawa for that nonsense. Yeah.
Why?
I got the ticket for $5.
Oh,
so it was an NHL game, and I'm an NHL fan. And so I'm not a hater of the Montreal Canadiens.
No.
I think the best way as I've extended this so far out, the best way forward for the Montreal Canadiens to get back to relevancy. I want great rivalries. I want tough matchups with the Canadiens. I want tough matchups with the Ottawa Senators. I want the Senators to be good. I want the Battle of Ontario, the battle of the Eastern Conference, whatever you want to call it, Eastern Coast of Canada. I want it to be good. And the best way for the Montreal Canadiens to do that is to start a new recipe and try and build it properly, because it hasn't been built properly.
I agree. But and imagine this. Imagine you're a Montreal fan right now and you're looking at the Scotia North Division and you're in fourth and you know things have been tough. And you look at the teams below you, Calgary, Vancouver, Ottawa, and you laugh because of how bad that they've been, right? And you're telling yourself, okay, well, for us to be better than Edmonton, Winnipeg, or Toronto, we have to be worse than those three teams. And for how long? They're not buying it because they know the pieces that they've got in the roster right now. They don't want to see Carey Price gone. They don't want to see a team with Nick Suzuki like just coming into the league and Romanov and now Caulfield getting his call. They don't want to see that type of team go, yeah, but we need to pump the brakes and not try to win for a couple of years so we can keep drafting. I think what some of them, and most of them do believe, and maybe even Bergevin believes, is they've done this well enough on the fly, that they've drafted well, that they haven't really, because they haven't been a super competitive team. Like, yeah, they made the playoffs, but they almost like they weren't going to last year. And in the season before that, they were just as scrappy. They got good draft picks. So I feel like they're one of those teams that like they don't buy into this quite yet, but as Leaf fans, we buy into it so quick and easy because we've seen what happens with teams like Tampa, Pittsburgh, Chicago, now Toronto. When you fail and fail and fail, and then draft like extremely high and then extremely well, like it just comes together. Although you do have the cap issues that start to like all the negative writers.
Yeah,
that's
let's
what
not
they
get
write about.
started there.
But in the end, Montreal has gone, no, we don't worry about that. We stay competitive with a guy like Carey Price. We make the trade on the fly and we draft properly. So it's like it's hard to just convince a Montreal fan that like, yeah, man, you need to give up. You need to sell off this, sell off that, and just forget about Romanov, Suzuki, Caulfield.
I'm not saying forget about those.
There's just
guys,
a lot of guys though, John, that have like been drafted and are starting to eventually make a mark that Montreal does. Like they don't. I can't be just like turning my head or nose up at Montreal. Like I'm always concerned about them every season. So the fact that they're in first to start this season, it felt right to me because I'm like, yeah, man, these guys are one of those teams that, especially because in Toronto we're so ignorant to it and we just think, oh, it's the Habs, they're trash. Like they're a sneaky good team. They're sneaky good. But then I look at this division, I put myself in Bergevin's shoes and I go, okay, but we don't have McDavid, we don't have Hellebuck, and we don't have Matthews. So we're kind of like, we've got Carey Price and we've got a bunch of guys that are like, and that step below that maybe haven't matured enough to reach that level yet, but I still think they have a lot of stock in Suzuki, a lot of stock in Caulfield, Romanov, etc. So it's one of those teams, as much as I agree your take, it can make sense because if you want to look at it from the other point of view, like just sell off, get rid of your big heavy contracts and your old guys, start maybe signing guys that you're planning on moving at the deadline, accrue pieces and keep drafting amazingly. But I feel like Montreal can't convince themselves of that yet until they have like a Calgary, Vancouver, Ottawa season. But like, you know what I mean? They're in that weird purgatory. It's hard to just like give up on something that they're almost like Leaf fans where they've got enough hope to not give up. You know what I mean? But they've got the
wheeler
pieces.
off a cliff season. If they miss the playoffs this year, it is their 18 wheeler off a cliff season. And I'm not making fun, but it's the situation where you have a team that held a playoff spot by a decent amount of points. They were high in the standings early on. Montreal was very high, first place at one point in the North Division.
With them in the
played extremely well through the first 20 games of a 56-game season, and then it started to fall off. Pieces started to get hurt. Things started to get rickety, and goals started to go in. It is their 18-wheeler off a cliff season, and it took the Leafs having that happen to them for them to decide to bring in Brendan Shanahan,
right,
and get this thing right, get this thing done properly. And unfortunately, for the Montreal Canadiens, in my opinion, the best thing to happen to them would be missing the playoffs and having the same thing happen for them. Have a guy come in here, right the ship, do it the right way. There are pieces here. Morgan Rielly was from that team, right? There are from that Kessel team. There are pieces in Montreal that you can keep, right? I'm not saying sell everything off. I'm saying you hit the restart button. You get Carey Price out of there any way you can. I don't think it's via trade with that contract. I think the best option is the expansion draft, and you hope that Seattle takes him. And then you restart from there. They have drafted pretty well, but it's not a team. Look at the Ottawa Senators. They have pieces. They're building the right way. Montreal Canadiens can do the exact same thing. It doesn't, just because you're bad for a couple years does not mean that you won't be good again. The Leafs were horrible. There were waffles being thrown on the ice, bags being worn on heads, people booing. It was literally almost embarrassing.
But you think it's gone that far in Montreal?
For years. No, it's not. It's not embarrassing to be a Montreal Canadiens fan. But I'm saying it went that far for the Leafs. It was embarrassing to be a Leafs fan.
So you're saying, bro, be proactive. Don't let it get that.
Don't get there.
Okay.
Yeah, don't let it get there. Don't let it be embarrassing to be a Canadiens fan. Get it fixed now. This is an infomercial.
That's
for
the
you,
most. That's
the
the most
Montreal Canadiens.
Yeah,
and Montreal fans.
If we're gonna take two sides on this, that's the most I've agreed with you. Is do something before you're what I did and embarrassed to be a fan of your hometown team for 10+ years. Couldn't agree with you more about the Montreal Canadiens in that regard. But again, man, like try to tell somebody who's sitting in fourth behind a McDavid, Winnipeg, and like I could say.
And
McDavid,
do you really want to ruin Caulfield? Honestly, I think if you've got that piece and he looks to be and could be as good as he actually is, don't you want to build around that?
That's fair. That's right, but you don't want to have him Taylor Hall, Jordan Eberle, never 3 playoff games in 8 years. You don't want that.
Mike Trout has played 3 playoff games and he's the best player in the game.
Yeah, but how good is that for the best player? How good is that?
I'm just saying sometimes you can be the best player and still not make the playoffs. It's a team game.
Yeah,
right.
But I'm saying in terms of you don't want to like Mike Trout the guy. I'm literally saying you don't want to ruin that Caulfield. Like you're saying, don't. I'd rather put Caulfield on a team like this that's 21-17 than a team that's like never going to make the playoffs. That's what I'm saying. That's all.
I think he gets more ice time in my world.
Is this
where he can build?
We're talking Habs so much today. I love it. Let's go.
Yeah, I think in my situation, he gets more ice time and thus gets the ability to build on his goal scoring talents. Goes against some top level talents and has to play against some really good defenders and really develop his style. Really go against the grindstone and prove, but not have the weight of the entire franchise because we're not expecting him to drag you to the playoffs, right? You want him to build and become that guy for you, right? So I think honestly, even with Caulfield, even with Suzuki, even with the guys they got, I think you need to move on from Carey Price. You've got Jake Allen, right? That's his name, Jake Allen. Yeah.
Yep.
And he's not a bad goaltender, right? It's not like you're putting in Dave Riddick, right? Like it's you've got a decent goaltender back there. He's a guy who was a number 1 before Jordan Binnington took the role, and Jordan Binnington hasn't been fantastic for St. Louis. So trading Jake Allen may have been a mistake, but on their half as well. So it's not like you're like, he's not Carey Price. Carey Price is going to go down as probably one of the greatest along the lines of great Montreal goaltenders, as I stumble over my words, with Patrick Waugh and with Ken Dryden and others before them, right? Like Carey Price will go down as one of them, and no, Jake Allen is not that, but he's not a piss poor goaltender in the NHL. He's a guy who can make you some saves, and he's a guy who can steal you some games. And so it's not like you're really going down with the dregs of it. But I just think that you could move on. You could do so much more with the money, and it would free them up to rebuild the franchise. You don't have to scrap everything and build it up from the ground level. You can take some of the parts out that are not working and replace them and make this machine run. Like you said, they're a pretty good team. They're in 4th place in the North Division right now. They're ahead of Ottawa, ahead of Vancouver, ahead of Calgary. So there are things going right here as we talk about this on the Habs podcast. It's not a horrible situation, but I just think the best possible situation for them moving forward is to carry priceless Montreal Canadiens, as crazy as that sounds.
I could see a future where they've sold off like their Petries and their Webbers and their Prices, and it would just be a whole different culture. Like if you sell off your Brendan Gallagher, right? Like all of a sudden, like anything that's ever kind of given them what their current identity is, and all of a sudden you've got these young pieces. That's a quick way to kind of change the culture. Just sell off those pieces that make up your current identity, and again, that's Petrie, Gallagher, Price, Weber. There's not too many more I could name that aren't really like the cornerstones of that franchise right now.
Yeah, and you get a new name in there to run the organization too,
Yeah.
right? That's key. Get someone who knows what they're doing. Get your Brendan Shanahan. And I know that's not easy to come across, but for a franchise like the Montreal Canadiens, that name draws a lot of people, a lot of big names who are going to want to rebuild that, right? The Toronto Maple Leafs drew Brendan Shanahan in because he wanted the allure of being the guy who turned the franchise around. There will be someone like that for the Montreal Canadiens.
Before we get into UFC, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention the Jays took a split against the Red Sox in their previous series. That was just a 2-game series, so that was a 1-1. And then against the Rays this week, they took 2-3. So good on them. I think they're 10-11 now on the season, and they avoided what could have been more of a serious injury when Ryu left the game, just pitching 3 2/3 innings yesterday. Struck out 5, but then he left with a right glute strain. But
he pulled a butt muscle.
A butt muscle, exactly. And Charlie Montoyo said it's nothing serious. So yeah, it's just crap. No pun intended. And then Tim Meza, Tyler Chatwood, and Rafael Dolis all came in to secure the win. Dolis got a second save of the season. So they're definitely working that bullpen, right? They're using a lot of different arms here to get through their early season issues. It started with Kirby Yates, and it's just really continued on throughout their arms. But now, like, you're still getting wins, even though you got guys leaving early. You've got a whole slew of guys coming in: Meza, Chatwood, Dolis. So it's. I mean, you're getting the job done regardless. And then they've got a series starting tomorrow against the Washington Nationals. So keep your eye on that. They're back in action tomorrow.
Here's another Posties percentage for you, if we want to call this a new segment. the Posties percentage that Charlie Montoyo will be in the Manager of the Year conversation at the end of the year.
What's the field look like before I throw up percentages? There are other guys you could see in the front runners.
I mean, there are front runners there. Without looking at the standings, Alex Cora is going to have to be up there with what he's doing with the Red Sox if that continues, right?
Yeah, they're overperforming for sure.
And sticking with the cheating scandal. Why am I forgetting his name?
The old guy in Houston. Oh, okay.
In Detroit, the former manager of the Houston Astros. For some reason, I'm forgetting his name, and completely embarrassed by that, by the way. But he's going to be AJ Hinch. AJ Hinch.
There you go.
He's going to be in the running as well. But getting back to that inning, this is why I bring up the Posties percentage. My percentage, Charlie Montoyo was in the Manager of the Year conversation. That's a 75% chance, especially if he continues with this run. That was a masterful performance by not only Chatwood and Dolis and Meza, but by Charlie Montoyo and by Pete Walker.
Yeah, good
masterful performance. Just there's no better bullpen usage than what you got right there, and that was a big deterrent. A big detriment that people were talking about with Charlie Montoyo is he looked lost in games and he didn't know how to manage his bullpen properly. Well, you talk about what things that Vladdy Guerrero has done and lost weight and getting better as a baseball player. Well, Charlie Montoyo obviously put the work in the off season to learn his roster, learn his team better, learn how to manage better, and he's come out on fire. He's managed games very well for the Toronto. Almost said Maple Leafs, the Toronto Blue Jays.
Maple Blue Jays.
Yeah, the Toronto Maple Blue Jays. He's managed games great for the Jays, and I could totally see him in the Manager of the Year talks. That was a great job. Ryu, he had this specific injury with the Dodgers one time, sat out 2 weeks because of it, and Ryu doesn't believe that's even the case here. Said in the press conference that he expects to make his next scheduled start. It was precautionary for the Blue Jays to pull him out of there, and a 1-0 game. That's more surprising. The Blue Jays don't play and win 1-0 games. The offense went away, but the pitching has been outstanding.
Here's where I'm surprised. Two errors charged to Bo Bichette and some more tough play from Biggio. That the real issue with the Jays, if you want to talk about anything, is just their infield defense right now. And that's where I'm surprised he can come out of that with a 1-0 game, the way that their infield defense is playing. Again, with those errors being charged to Bichette in that game, you're going, okay, like those are the two kind of major learning curves with those guys, because they're both kind of learning the position on the fly, are they not?
Yeah. Well, and now the only person in major leagues with more errors at shortstop than Bo Bichette is Fernando Tatis. Bo has 6, Tatis has 9, but Tatis is mashing baseballs.
Yeah.
Not that Bo's not hitting, but but Tatis is smashed.
Tatis was in the news, by the way, because he looked at he took a peek at a sign. I think it was the one that Trevor Bauer came out and said he actually loved it, which surprised me. Took a peek at a sign from a catcher and then swung and hit a dinger all in one at bat. Dude,
Yeah.
if that's not kind of cheating, I don't know what is, man. But
that
like
happens all the time. Okay, so you'll notice in games, more likely later on in games, watch the catcher. He'll set up and he'll wait, and then when the pitch comes in, he'll move to another spot.
Yeah,
because the batter is standing there, and you think that guy's not looking down at his feet, and like he's got one eye cocked over and trying to take a look at where the catcher's position. Where
you see it a lot, like on an inside pitch, the catcher will like suddenly like sneak behind the batter as the pitch is coming in, and you're like, wait a second, he was actually framing that like more outside or down the heart of the plate before he threw it. Yeah, it's a sneaky move.
Yeah.
You have to though. You have to.
So the Tatis pulled it off successfully. Trevor Bauer is always in conversations with questionable things. Actually, there was a celebration afterwards.
He was like, I love it.
Yeah, I believe Tatis had a celebration where he covered one eye, right? And he covered his one eye because apparently in spring training, Bauer pitched against them with one eye closed.
My God.
So that's
at least Bauer's not butthurt. You know what? That's why I kind of like the guy, because he's fiery and he's
controversial.
He's controversial, polarizing. You fire out a verb, and that's what he is. Like they grabbed his baseballs and he was mad about it, and he's constantly mouthy. But then in the end, it's like, okay, like he kind of like makes the game fun because somebody else punks him, and he's like, yeah, I got punked.
In the PGA just announced, and we don't talk golf a lot on this pod, but the PGA just announced a new incentive for moving the needle, a $40 million purse for the top 10 golfers who have the meet some sort of metrics, like most Google searches. There's only one metric that has anything to do with how well they play.
Okay.
And so if my point is if that existed for baseball, it would go to Bauer in this situation because he is must watch. If he's not must watch in game, you're all like people are Googling and watching what this guy said post game, pre game, the scuffles he's got into, the scandals he's been into.
You know what? Too the reason Trevor Bauer, for some reason, is kind of close to the brain or the heart. The very first time I ever recall knowing or finding out who this guy was,
the drone pilot,
yes, sir, yes, sir, pitching with the bloody hand in that playoff series, and
he got like 1/3 of an inning.
Yep.
Yeah, he pitched 1/3 of an and he threw the ball from the mound over the center field wall when he had a fit. Fun guy. So he's just one of those polarizing guys. And so Trevor Bauer, no surprise that he's getting into it with some Padres guys. Getting back to the Blue Jays though, getting back to the infield defense, because this all stemmed from talking about Bo's errors.
Yes.
It's pretty bad. It's pretty bad. But it's a situation where if you believe in Bo Bichette as a shortstop, then you have to ride it out. Kevin Biggio's different. His bat doesn't play as well to the MLB level, and he's more of a bit piece. But Bo Bichette and Vlad Guerrero, these are key centerpieces of your lineup that you're trying to build around. So I think that you owe it to him to stick with him and let him grow with it.
Yeah.
Some of the great, and you bring up the greats, you bring up Derek Jeter and other guys who struggled early on as shortstops. And I'm not saying that Bo Bichette is Derek Jeter. I'm just saying that if Derek Jeter was allowed those at bats and those opportunities, then maybe we should allow our guy with the same sort of leash, right?
Yeah.
In regards to third base, it's crazy how the guy that needs to play third base for the Toronto Blue Jays is going to not be on the team next week. Because Santiago Espinal. Santiago Espinal is the best infield defender the Toronto Blue Jays have. And he's just not important enough. I don't know. Like his bat isn't good enough. Something isn't good enough to keep him in the lineup.
Well, he was a later call up. He didn't even start the season with them, right?
It's a situation where people are wondering if BGO didn't have that last name, would it not be him not on the lineup roster card and Espinal would be in there? And I harken back to situations, and the Blue Jays weren't competitive in these years, so you can throw that in my face if you want, but John McDonald played for this team and he did not have a bat, but he had outstanding defense. He was a vacuum. He got it to second, he got it to third, he got it home, he got it to first. He was a guaranteed out when you hit it to John McDonald.
Right.
And so you need stable defense, especially you need fast twitch reflexes for third base. And he seems to be able to play third base very well. So
You're talking Espinal?
I'm talking Espinal. I think
Yeah.
Espinal
So
is
zero
the
bat,
best option.
but a guy that you can rely
Maybe
on.
not zero bat, but a guy who's if we're talking about the show, he's a guy who has contact in the
20s.
in the 50s. No, in the 50s. 20s are like pitchers, right? Like he's got contact in the 50s, power in the 40s.
I'm
but
thinking of my creative player. Sorry.
But his defense is in the 80s.
Yeah.
Right. And
Exactly.
his defense is a diamond level defense. Right. And that's how I view Santiago Espinal, how he plays third, how he's played the position for the Blue Jays. But it's sad that he won't be able to play that position. Before we get out of Blue Jays talk, George Springer is rumored to be back tomorrow.
Oh, yeah.
Versus
I'm
the
sure
Washington Nationals.
I'm sure he is, John.
But we've said that before.
I don't even want to talk about it anymore.
We have to wait until we see a lineup card and see if he's on top of the lineup batting leadoff. But that would be fantastic for everyone. It would push everyone down another spot, and add a lot more danger to the lineup.
Forget
and now
to mention,
all we would need is getting Teoscar Hernandez back in this lineup and hitting.
We forget to mention that like two of the biggest offseason signings haven't even worn a uniform yet, and one of them won't in Kirby Yates, right? So it's kind of funny. The Jays are 10-11. They're performing to expectations, if not a little bit better in some regards, maybe a little bit. We talked about the deficiencies in the infield defense, but like they're lacking that big off-season signing, and that's I don't like talking about it because it's such easy low-hanging fruit. But yeah, if they get him back, it moves everybody down in the batting order. They've got a better team altogether. They're pitching well. They've been lacking all the other stuff. Their pitching has been, like you said, a masterpiece. So if that's the issue, they've already got answers for it. It just kind of, you have to be patient, right, with the bats and with the infield. So the pitching being the one that you don't always have an answer for, and they have that answer, it's good to know, with a team that's 10-11, haven't dug themselves any holes early on. Meanwhile, other teams in the division so far have and are trying to kind of rebound back. It's a nice position to be in if you're the Blue Jays, because again, they're like the Montreal Canadiens. They're scrappy. You don't expect too much from them. They've got some of those, maybe one or two older guys, but they're not even that old, and just a bunch of young prospects. You're hoping if you stay patient on them, they get you somewhere. And so far, it looks good. I like what I see when I watch the Jays.
Yeah, and we might be in a situation where we find ourselves looking at Lourdes Gurriel being the odd man out in the outfield once everyone gets back healthy.
Why is he so good in MLB games? I don't understand. He was like such a good MLB The Show 20 player, and now in 21, he's like the best gold card behind Kirby Yates. It's like, why does he get a better card than Vlad or Bo every time? I don't understand why Gurriel's so highly rated by people.
I don't know why he's a gold rating in the show.
It's multiple games.
His bat isn't that great this year, but he has shown that he is valuable in the outfield when it comes to outfield assists. He got 2 in the last week, and he's been a question mark defensively on some fly balls, but that's another thing that could take time to develop. It's a brand new position really to him. He's been a shortstop his whole life before he came to the Blue Jays.
That makes sense too.
The Blue Jays transitioned him and from a shortstop to a left fielder. That could be a situation where he's still not fully used to the position, right? And he's not used to running the proper routes to balls, but he can definitely fire. He fires that ball in at 91 miles an hour, Ryan. 91 miles
I
an
notice
hour.
he has a good arm, but you can see why, John, I'm like, okay, we talk about Vlad, Bo, Cavan Biggio, we talk about all these guys, but like, why don't we ever talk about Gurriel when he's apparently like, by the guys that make the video games, he's like rated so high. I'm like, why is this guy good? Like, how come I am the guy that's supposed to be able to talk sports and has no clue why Gurriel's good?
Well, I mean, last year his bat played, and he was a power threat in the lineup, but this year it just hasn't come around, right?
Okay.
So hopefully he gets out of that funk, and then we're talking about a situation where we have a question mark, and I hope it's not a situation where Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is playing third base, but we may have to have that conversation eventually, just so that we can keep Rowdy Tellez in the lineup and keep the lineup as strong as possible through this torrid 162 game pace. We have gone long.
Oh yeah.
We've got to get out of here, but before we do, a little bit of the UFC 261. A nightmare situation for Chris
anybody who
Weidman.
watches sports has seen that for sure. And unfortunately, that's like those everything like the who was it, the Theismann injury. You've got who's the Celtic the Celtic Gordon Hayward injury. Like they just always once a year. There's always one like this, eh?
It's not as bad as this one,
Ugh.
but Richard Zednick.
Yeah.
Like I mean, that one was
that's totally different genre
that was
for sure.
That was
They're
life
talking.
I'm talking life and death, but there are arteries in that leg, Ryan.
Yeah.
Right. Like internal bleeding you could have cut easily. Bad things could have happened where it could have been way worse than it was. Yeah. Right. So this was one of the worst situations. And the second time we've seen it in the UFC, or at least the second time that I've seen it in the UFC, it happened 8 years ago. Anderson Silva versus Chris Weidman. Anderson Silva breaks his leg. Everyone knows that. Sounded like a bat breaking. Well,
wait a minute. Is that when he won and they were like, "What's wrong with your foot?"
It was against Chris Weidman. Anderson Silva broke his leg on Chris Weidman.
Okay.
In the exact same way. Like he snapped it off and it was like just broken right now.
Something else. Okay.
And so it's really crazy how Chris Weidman himself has the exact same injury, and it was horrific to watch. Absolutely horrific to watch, man. And I had to take a minute and compose myself. If you do not have a strong stomach, if things like that bother you, do not look up the video because you do not want to see it. But it was a really tough way to start off the pay-per-view because in the Anthony Smith fight previous, Anthony Smith lands a leg kick to his opponent, and I can't remember his name, but he strikes the back of his knee with all the force, and Dana White believes that Buddy's knee was done. It was popping out all over the place. He couldn't put any pressure on it. Dana White believes that he blew up all his tendons in his knee and will need knee surgery. So I don't know any report on the any updates on that.
He took a kick like to the soft back of his knee.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, and his knee was it lost all structure. He couldn't put any pressure on it. It kept popping out, and it was definitely gross. So two fights, and the first two fights on the card, you got that one, and then you have the Chris Weidman incident, and Uriah Hall becomes the first. As much as he would not, I guarantee, if you ask Uriah Hall if he considers what happened at UFC 261 a win, he would tell you no.
He has respect happy
for Chris Weidman.
Yeah, he looked kind of stone faced when they were raising his arm there. He just kind of like
it was the emotion was horrible. It was like running through him. Like, this is a guy who one of his last fights was against Anderson Silva, and he was crying in the ring with Silva. Right, like this is a guy who has strong emotions, and that happens, and so he becomes the first fighter in UFC history to win a fight without ever throwing a kick or a punch.
Yeah, that's a weird way to win, eh?
Yeah, so technical TKO, doctor stoppage, and then we move on to the first title fight, Valentina Shevchenko versus Jessica Andrade. Andrade was supposed to be this wrestler who was going to come in and take Shevchenko down, dominate her. She wasn't going to stand with her. She was going to be the first challenge to a GOAT of the division. And you know what Valentina Shevchenko went and did, Ryan? She took her down.
Yeah.
And she out wrestled her. And she's just like, and at the end of the fight, she's just like, to all the other fighters out there, if you think you found a flaw, don't bother. There isn't one. Right. So she'll take any oncomer and she will adjust to them.
I wish that's what Rasmus still post game.
And then we move on to Rose Namajunas versus Weili Zhang. Weili Zhang with I believe it was a 21 fight win streak. Rose Namajunas has just come back. Weili is the title holder. There was a little bit of heat between them. Rose came on the mic after and said that she didn't mean it in any way that it was taken. So I guess misconstrued. But Weili Zhang comes in, Rose comes in and kicks her head off.
Yeah, I saw that. I did end up seeing that.
Kicked her head off, and it was so shocking. I was going in there a huge Rose fan. I wanted her to win, man. But after seeing the Weidman thing, my mood was way down in the dumps, right? Like it's hard to come back off of seeing something like that, and get back into a sporting event. And then, but to see what Rose did, oh man, I jumped up, I screamed, I was so happy. She won the title. She was crying when she had the title put on her. She's come so far, and to be champion and to do it in a moment, to do it against Weili Zhang, just great job. And then we get to the main event, man.
Yeah, that all brings the energy back for the big card here.
the main
The
event,
Nigerian
Usman
Nightmare, Usman. Let's go.
versus Jorge Street Jesus Masvidal.
Yeah, Masvidal's
And
a big talker. Before we get into the actual result here, was it not Masvidal at the end of the one? I think McGregor fight. He was in a big silk robe. The McGregor,
yeah,
like the
he wore
robe
the
that
exact
McGregor wore.
outfit McGregor wore. Yeah,
You're the one who
yeah,
told me. Yeah,
yeah,
that's actually
yeah. He was
he's
discount
basically
McGregor.
yeah, and he's called him out. He said, "Oh, da da da." Like I just remember thinking, okay, this guy must be because I'm not the biggest UFC guy. I'll watch them when they're on, but to follow on all this turnover, it's really hard sometimes to keep up on all these new people. And now that shows you how much of a fan I am. Masvidal's not new at all, but just there's a new face for me, and I remember thinking, okay, I wouldn't mind to see a guy in a fight, and then this is what I see. This is the next thing I end up seeing is this guy get his head beat up. So
Yeah,
take it
well,
away.
he's got the BMF title. He's the baddest mother. You know what? In the UFC, and apparently, I don't know if that statement can be true anymore.
Oh, it's refutable for sure.
He won that title on a stoppage that Nate Diaz would rather have not have happened. But yeah, going up against Kamaru Usman, the first match, it was boring. It was a boo. It was a snore fest. It was like boo worthy. Usman won with foot stomps. It was so bad. And there, Jorge was in there on 6 days. He had to cut like 25 pounds.
Oh, this is you're talking previous.
Was,
like they've already fought once already. Eh? Okay, this was the
they
rematch,
fought once.
That's right.
And on the first match at Fight Island, Jorge took it on 6 days notice. He had to cut like 20 plus pounds, and it was just a nightmare. He didn't have any cardio. He had to come out swinging, and Usman, like I said, he smothered him, foot stomps against the cage, controlled the fight, and still Usman. And then so Masvidal didn't really have any respect after that for Usman because he didn't feel his power. And those are the exact words that Masvidal said.
Oh my god!
At the end of the fight,
dude, he felt his power this week.
The piston-like power of Usman's jab. Like when you watch that finish, he pulls back, and you could see him cock up, and boom, just fires that right into Masvidal's jaw.
Just wrecked him.
And then
how many shots did he get in as he was down? It was like 5 quick ones. 1, 2, 3, 4. It's
yeah, because you could see when Masvidal was down, and they pointed it out. When you slow it down, after he's down from the one shot, he's half unconscious, but still trying to get up. That's how tough Masvidal is.
That's like the head kick in the female fight too, right? She went down and she's up right away. Like, I didn't get knocked down. What are you talking about?
Yeah, but then when you look it back, you're just like, you were completely unconscious. Okay,
yeah, like you fell asleep mid-fight.
Yeah, with Masvidal, he came out and credit to him. He's just like, that's it. I didn't feel his power the first round or the first fight. I felt it this time. Right. And so yeah, Usman. The one thing I don't agree with is how they're putting him up and saying he could be the greatest welterweight of all time. I'm sorry, Ryan. That title is taken.
By who?
One Georges St-Pierre.
Right. Isn't there rumors he might come back and fight again, though, too?
I don't know if he's ever going to come back to the UFC. He looks glorious with that hair. Can I just say?
Well,
I did not know bald was by choice for Georges St-Pierre. But, man, that hair looks fantastic.
Right.
It took me a little bit to get used to, but totally used to it now. But, yeah, you can't be the greatest welterweight of all time. I'm sorry. You can be the greatest welterweight of your era, right? But in an era where Ultimate Fighting was still young and wasn't what it is today,
like not as regulated, right?
Yeah, well, and it wasn't as big, right? He helped grow the sport, grassroots style, right? So, like, it's a situation where you can't really say greatest of all time. I mean, I guess for anybody, but he would have been the first greatest welterweight in UFC history.
You're talking
right? So,
St. Pierre.
Yeah, so let's put some respect on that name.
Absolutely.
Usman is fantastic. He's apparently unbeatable. I don't know who's next. But let's put some respect on the name of Georges St-Pierre and not forget the fact that he's the greatest welterweight in the history of the UFC, and Usman's working his way to be parallel with Georges St-Pierre, not be above him.
I got you. Outside of the UFC, are you looking forward to the Logan Paul and Mayweather fight coming up now?
Oh my God, I can't wait to see a Paul brother get.
What is with all these Paul fights, man?
And it sucks. You know what? I was watching Impulsive the only one time I ever watched it after the fight. I watched a clip of it where they were talking about Pete Davidson and how he did
great
commentary.
Yeah. I didn't realize Jake Paul didn't want him doing all that, and I ended up listening to it all back, and that's like, what a savage. You hear that intro where he's like, yeah, I guess it proves that you can basically do anything if you have a following. Like, just shit talking.
And he shit talked boxing. He's like, proves how far boxing's fallen.
Yeah, and then when he's out on the way, he's like, now to some real broadcasters. Holy man.
Yeah, you know how professional this place is because they hired me.
Yeah. Wow, the one-liners from Pete.
Yeah, he was great. It was funny, and Logan found it funny.
Yeah, in that interview, I heard it too.
Jake was all butthurt about it. Yeah. I was just like, man, you thought Pete Davidson was trashing you? Pete Davidson was playing a character.
Yeah,
that's like getting mad at someone on WWE for being a heel. For being a bad guy and thinking they're the bad guy in real life.
You can see where Jake Paul is like, yeah, I don't like that. Honestly, even Logan says like, I thought it was like kind of all part of the production, but then I didn't. Yeah. Then he's like, why is this guy saying all this stuff on your production? Like, what happened here? Where's the disconnect? Anyway,
and there's humor in it, and I guess Jake didn't see it. And I'm not a fan of the Paul brothers at all. I don't think either of them are fantastic, outstanding role model human beings. But of the two, I mean, Logan's not the guy I want to see get his face punched in.
Okay, so there's the thing. Like,
Floyd Mayweather is not losing to this man.
No, he doesn't.
He's got an unbeaten record.
He's never. That's the whole. Wasn't that the thing? Everybody always wanted to see Mayweather get beat up, and now like Mayweather's the guy that they want to see beat up Logan Paul. Like, it's like, I don't think Mayweather is really going to throw. Isn't his whole thing? He just dances around the ring. We learned that with the McGregor Mayweather fight. Listen.
He extended that fight to give people their money's worth. If you look back at that Mayweather McGregor fight, if you look back at it with sober eyes and watching it boxing, Mayweather could have ended that in the first round.
Right.
But he toyed around. He gave people something to watch and something to drink through and cheer and boo and whatnot. And he gave him a show. Floyd Mayweather is a masterful boxer.
I still think that fight leading up to it, the 5 like events that were done to pump things up,
they're fantastic.
Were the most entertaining sports stuff I've ever seen.
I loved it. I loved how it was literally
like concerts. Fest. They were like live concerts that you could go to just to hear someone like talk.
Honestly, I think Jake Paul probably saw those and just tried to recreate it like he recreates Conor McGregor.
Let's hope we can get something entertaining like that, because like
it was like 9 hours. Yeah, that pay-per-view was 9 hours, and a lot of it was music, and I don't know how many people enjoyed it, but that's too long.
I was there to see Doja Cat for sure. That was what I was there for.
That's too long for me. I do need to see the Paul brother get beaten up, so it's good that we're going to see Floyd Mayweather do his thing. I don't think Jake Paul is ever going to face anybody who means anything. That's me saying that I was rooting for Ben Askren. Ben Askren has never, ever knocked a person out standing, like on the feet with the hands. Right. Never, ever, ever in his life. He is a wrestler. He is a guy. He self-admittedly said in podcasts, man, I used to let people in MMA throw the overhand right so I could grab them and throw them down to the mat. You can't do that in boxing. No. And he got clipped with an overhand right and knocked him down. Right. So he's not a boxer. He's not a striker.
$600K for him.
And he also had $500K base plus whatever. He's not a boxer. He's an MMA guy. And so he's done MMA for 15 years, and he's got to learn or unlearn a technique that's 15 years deep in like 2 months. And also Ben Askren had full hip replacement surgery in September.
Wow.
So, this is the guy we're talking that Jake Paul wanted to fight. Jake Paul will never fight anyone that matters. He'll never fight anyone that he thinks he will lose to. He's setting himself up Vince McMahon WWE style, building a storyline and building a fake record that will never stand up. Dana White said as much. He said that he was going to send them a cease and desist letter for trying to challenge his fighters. That's how annoyed he was getting with the situation.
With that being said, though, do we not think then that the Logan Paul Floyd Mayweather fight might be kind of the best one yet, because it's still a Paul brother, and yet it's like somebody that he'll probably like not be able to beat? It's kind of like nice for a change, because normally you're just going.
But it's not Jake. I want to see Jake get his face pistoned in, not Logan. Like Jake. Like, oh man, Daniel Cormier almost smacked Jake's face off at UFC 261. He was there, front row. Jake Paul was. He was mouthing off. DC
Oh
got
my
right
God.
in his face, poked in his face, and said, "You don't want nothing to do with this." Right? He said on commentary that if he didn't stop, he was going to take his headset off and go slap that kid in the mouth.
He just
So-
I think the Pauls just absolutely love that, what they call clout now, right? Like, he just wants to be front and center of a UFC. Now there's just another
Sitting next
reason
to Antonio Brown.
Oh my God.
Like, UFC 261 was in Florida. Guaranteed AB had 2 tickets, and Paul, because it was only Paul next to AB. Guaranteed AB had 2 tickets, and Paul's like, "Yo, what do I got to do to get that ticket? I'll go with you, blah, 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 pay whatever."
Just 2 villains in the pop culture world.
Yeah, AB and Jake Paul. Yeah, so anyway
Buddy. Yeah, we've gone way too long now. We said we went long like 45 minutes ago, so now we're really going too long. If I didn't feel your power before, I definitely feel your power now. That's my outro.
all right, buddy.
Johnny. We'll talk next week, probably sooner than Monday. Well, maybe Thursday, Friday pod, and then that'll be it for my submissions. But doesn't mean the show's gonna end, because I enjoy being back here with you. So that's it.
Yeah, no, I'm having a blast. We continue this. We'll continue the post game, and make sure you like, subscribe, follow, check it out. We have the post game media website as well, where we host our blogs and all of our other content. So make sure you check it all out, guys.
Yeah, follow us there. Follow us on YouTube, and have yourselves a good week. We'll be back next week. Thanks a lot, John. Talk to you soon, buddy.
Peace.
Peace out.